The LawnMaster GVB1316 sits in that sweet spot between a light yard gadget and a professional machine. It is a corded dethatcher and scarifier, which means it lifts dead grass and moss, and it can also cut shallow grooves in the soil to let water, air, and nutrients move more freely. If you have a small to medium lawn, especially cool season grass that builds up a spongy layer over time, this is aimed right at you. If you are overseeding in spring or fall, or you just want your sprinkler water to stop pooling on the surface, this category makes a noticeable difference. The first thing that matters in day-to-day use is how it handles. The deck has a sturdy feel without being overly heavy, and the handlebar adjusts to a comfortable height. I am average height, and I did not have to hunch over or push with my arms locked. The wheels track straight and do not dig in when you pivot at the end of a row. The working width is 16 inches, which is wide enough to cover ground without feeling like a snowplow. You still get into corners and around tree rings without fuss. The collection bag hangs securely and comes off with one motion. It is a 12-gallon bag, so you get a few passes before you need to empty it, but I will talk about that a bit more in a moment. Setup took me about 15 minutes from opening the box to the first pass on the lawn. I attached the handle, swapped on the drum I wanted, and checked the height setting with a quick twist of the dial. Everything you touch feels straightforward. There is a safety button you press before you squeeze the trigger, so it does not jump to life when you bump it. I like that sequence because I move between the lawn and the patio while adjusting the height, and the extra step kept me from accidentally starting it while plugging in. This is a corded tool, so a good outdoor rated extension cord matters. I used a 14-gauge cord for a longer run and a 12-gauge cord when I had to stretch to the back corner. With the right cord, the motor feels steady, and there was no bogging down when the tines met a thicker patch of thatch. Once it is running, the motor spins up quickly and stays consistent. I will not recite rotations per minute here, but I can say the power feels more like a serious lawn tool than a delicate rake. Noise is similar to an electric mower, not whisper quiet, but not the shriek you sometimes get with cheaper tools. I could hear the motor note change slightly when I crossed a dense area, which gave me a helpful cue to slow my walking pace. Vibration through the handle is present but controlled, so my hands did not buzz after a half hour. After a full session, the motor housing was warm but never hot, and there was no burnt smell from the tines. Performance-wise, I tested both functions across a suburban cool season lawn that has a mix of sunny and shaded sections. For dethatching, I started high and stepped down a click at a time until the tines were grabbing brown material but not shredding green blades. The difference was immediate. The first pass pulled up enough dead grass to fill the bag quickly, and after 2 passes in perpendicular directions, the lawn looked combed rather than scalped. On a small patch that had compacted soil near the driveway, I switched to the scarifier drum. Those blades cut narrow grooves that looked like tiny stitching marks. Water from my hose test went straight into the soil instead of sitting on top. A couple of days later, the area dried more evenly after a rain. That is exactly what I wanted from a scarifier. Swapping between the dethatching drum and the scarifying drum is not something you do every minute, but it is simple enough that I did not dread it. I loosened the fasteners, dropped the installed drum, slid in the other, and tightened everything back down. The system keeps the drum aligned, so there is no awkward fiddling while you hold up a heavy piece with one hand. Height adjustment is the part I kept returning to throughout the day. There are multiple clicks of adjustment, and I actually used several of them. On the shady side that tends to be softer, I raised it a notch so I did not gouge. On the sun-baked strip along the sidewalk, I lowered it to bite in. The control has clear detents, so you know when you moved it, and you can repeat a setting across the yard without guessing. Real-world testing had a few highlights. I did an early spring cleanup when the ground had thawed, but the grass had not fully kicked into growth. One slow lap around the front yard filled the bag twice. After that, I stopped using the bag in the wide open areas and let the thatch fall in rows, then raked it into a pile. That was faster for a bigger space. In tighter areas near plant beds, I clipped the bag back on to catch debris and keep the mulch clean. The handle height adjustment came in handy when I went along a gentle slope. I lowered the handle a click and could keep the front even with the surface instead of dig in with the front edge. I also ran it over a patch where my dog has a favorite path. The scarifier opened shallow lines, I sprinkled seed, and a couple of weeks later I had new growth starting where it used to be bare. A specific use case where this shine was fall over seeding. I set the scarifier to a moderate depth and worked the yard in a grid pattern, first north to south, then east to west. Those shallow grooves held on to seed instead of letting it blow away. I followed with a light pass of the dethatcher set high to loosen the top without tearing up the seed bed. Water soaked in quickly, and germination was more even than in previous years. I used to rent a heavier machine for this, and while those commercial units go deeper, this tool got me the result I needed without a half day of pickup and return. There are a couple of thoughtful touches that improved the experience. The safety start sequence sounds simple, but it prevented surprises. The handle has a comfortable angle, so your wrists are not kinked while pushing. The deck height dial is right where your hand naturally falls, so you do not have to bend to find it. The collection bag frame is rigid enough that it pops into place without wrestling. I also like that the design sits flat when you set it down, so you can change drums or clean the tines without propping it up on a knee. I do have a few nitpicks. The cord management is the trade-off with any corded lawn tool. I worked in a pattern where the cord stayed behind me, but I still had to pause and flip it around a couple of times per pass. If you have a yard deeper than a typical suburban lot, you will need a heavy-duty long cord, and that adds weight that you pull behind you. The collection bag, while generous for a bag of this type, will still fill quickly if your lawn has not been dethatched in a few years. For a big area, I think the faster workflow is to go without the bag and rake the debris after. Also, like any scarifier, this will not be kind to sprinkler heads, shallow lighting wires, or decorative rocks hidden in the grass. I marked my sprinkler heads with flags and did a quick walk to pick up anything hard before I started. Despite those minor hassles, the payoff is obvious. The lawn stood up straighter after the first pass, and within a week the color looked richer because new growth could push through. Bare areas accepted seed, and runoff became less of an issue. The machine does not feel like it is fighting you, which matters when you are out there for an hour or two. Storage is simple. The handle folds, and it fits in the same corner where I keep my mower. Cleanup is just brushing off the tines and tapping the bag clean. I like to spray the drum with a little silicone before I put it away, and that kept grass from sticking during the next use. If you care about lawn health and you are working with a small to medium-sized yard, this is the right type of tool. It is strong enough to make a real change in one session, adjustable enough for different soil and grass conditions, and easy enough to live with that you will use it more than once a year. If you want cordless freedom or if you maintain a very large property, a different approach may fit better. For a typical suburban lawn, overseeding in fall and cleanup in spring, I would reach for this every time. To learn more about the LawnMaster GVB1316 electric 1613 amp dethatcher and scarifier, please check the comments section. Thank you for watching.